Hey, welcome to SportsBeat Live, the Stars Chiefs post-game show, where we talk to the people who cover the Chiefs, and we talk to you with your questions and comments. And tonight we've got a 27-24 Chiefs victory to discuss, victory over the Tampa Bay Bucs. And my first thought about this game was it doesn't seem to matter who the Chiefs play. It doesn't matter where they play. It doesn't matter about the quality of the opponent, Hall of Fame quarterback or no. The Chiefs are going to find a way to take the game to the last couple of minutes and even the last couple of seconds, as was the case tonight. So Chiefs win. They improve to, 10-1, firm control of the AFC West, and hold on to the number 2 seed in the playoff race behind the undefeated Steelers, who don't play until Tuesday against the Baltimore Ravens, and we'll see if that game even gets played. So you guys know the drill. Please send us your question and comments. We'll get to them as soon as we can. And in the house already, Sam McDowell and Vahe Gregorian. Hello, fellas.
Hi, Blair. I wasn't worried about my hair when it was just you and me in the office, but now I see myself in the mirror, and I'm sorry I don't look like quality I should with you and Sam.
Hey, you look fine, Vahe. You look fine. You look better than Sam Mellinger, who just joined us.
Here's some help.
Help is on the way.
Yeah, fuck you guys.
What's up, Sam? That will not show up on the podcast later.
I hope it does.
Not that much after dark.
All right, let's start with what went extremely well for the Chiefs tonight. And I believe, Sam McDowell, you were all over Tyreek Hill story. So let's get into it.
Yeah, I was the only one all over Tyreek Hill based on today. For whatever reason, the Bucs decided to single cover Tyreek Hill all day, and we haven't seen that much all year. We've seen a lot of the single safety stuff that we saw today, but usually that safety is a lot more towards Tyreek Hill. And today they tried to take away Travis Kelce. And, obviously we've talked about this a ton for 2 years now. It's a pick your poison deal. But they, for whatever reason, tried to leave Carlton Davis on Tyreek Hill. And we ended up with some great images on the sideline of Carlton Davis with his head buried in his hands, arguing with an assistant coach, just the works, because he could not stay with Tyreek Hill today.
And I enjoyed how Tyreek Hill went to the rotary dial telephone on the sideline as well to deliver a message to the Tampa Bay Bucs fans that CBS cameraman caught. But
we finally figured out one bonus, Blair, of not being at the stadium. That was today when we got to see that highlight, because we wouldn't have seen that if we were at the stadium.
Nope, no, we would not have.
We heard it.
In 11 weeks, we're up to 1.
Sam Mellinger, if you can keep your language clean, tell us I heard the question you asked Andy Reid. I thought it was really interesting, kind of asking him to contrast a couple of moments in the game. What'd you come up with?
Yeah, well, I make no promises about the language, guys. You've known me long enough for that. I thought it was really interesting how the game, he had these two. He had more than two, but he had these two that I focused on, little decisions. These specific decisions. The first one on the first drive when they had 4th and goal from the 1, and I'm just I will never not want a team to go for 4th and goal from the 1. Just if you don't get it, the worst situation is that the other team takes over at the 1, and we know how teams typically play call in those situations. They kick the field goal, which there's enough on the other side. You want to get the early lead. I get it, all these things, but then late, and it's funny. It's interesting to me too, because at times Andy Reid is criticized as like being too conservative, right? So fast forward to the end of the game, they've got 2nd and 9. And the highest paid analyst in TV history is like screaming down, you gotta run it, just run it twice, give the ball up with, Brady will get the ball with like 25 seconds left, 90 yards to go. Just go do that. And Andy Reid calls 2 pass plays. And the first one, It should have been a safe play, but because it's a pass, the ball was really low. Edwards-Helaire had to make a really nice adjustment to come up with that catch. And then the second one, they moved the pocket to the left. The weak side, Mahomes steps up between defenders. There was kind of a rocket right down to the sideline to Tyreek. I mean, that's a hell of a gutsy call in that situation to seal it out. And Andy's explanation basically early was, give me points, and late was, don't let Tom Brady back on the field. I just thought it was just kind of a little interesting window into what I think is one of the most interesting minds of anybody that I've covered in 10 years in this job.
I don't think there's any way they could run the 4-minute drill without a couple of passes, and that's what it amounted to, right? This running game and this offensive line is not going to put together 4 minutes plus a 2-minute warning by just overpowering an opponent.
No, that's exactly right. And that's one of the things I love about, especially the 2 passes late, even if they didn't work. You're playing to your team's strength. Like how often, you've got Patrick Mahomes, you've got a $500 million quarterback, like use him. And that's what I loved about those situations. It's also why I think they should have gone for the 4th and 1. Even though, to be fair, they already did their little black pearl. Is that what we're calling it now? Of a double, is it one? It was 2 laterals. Right, and then you give your tight end the option of either running over a cornerback or throwing it to the quarterback who was in the end zone. So they already did that. So maybe they just felt like let's just kick it and take the points.
It was kind of a funny contrast though to let's do the quarterback in motion, double reverse pass, option pass, but we're not going to go for on 4th and 1. I know they're 2 different things, but it was sort of just felt like philosophical difference.
They are loving the snap to Mahomes in motion lately. Is this like 3 weeks in a row now?
3 games in a row.
3 games in a row.
3 games, yeah.
The other piece of what Mellinger is talking about is it's not just that Patrick Mahomes is really, really good. It's that he's really, really smart in those situations. First time he ran for a first down, or was it the second first down, he realized that none of his options were open, and you could tell he was not going to throw it unless the completion was a sure thing or 90%, whatever his ratio is there. And so he scrambled because you could tell he felt like, I have to stay in bounds here. That's priority number 1 is to keep the clock rolling, but we're going to have the option to pass. So he ends up scrambling for a first down. I just don't know how many quarterbacks do that in that situation.
Look, 3 first downs that he really was completely responsible for, I think, in that sequence, right? 2 of them were with runs, making something out of nothing, really. And then Blair and I were sitting nearby each other, not too near, but nearby each other here in the office. And I think we thought we saw the same thing. As he scrambled on that 3rd and 7 pass, it looked like he was about ready to just say, well, I'm going to have to go down. And then, like he tells everybody else to do, and like he does, he kept the play going, and he kept his eyes up, and he saw the flash where he could get it to Tyreek Hill. And that is such a dimension to his game. It's the intelligence, it's the resourcefulness, it's the imagination, and the execution all at once that just you can't duplicate it.
He really is. I think I've said this before, but he is so smart that if he had average talent, I think he'd be a good quarterback. And he is so talented that if he had average intelligence, I think he'd be a good quarterback. And to have both of them along with all the support, it's unbelievable. It's absolutely incredible to watch.
Hey, Herbie Teope's with us as well. Herbie, what did we learn? That's what you write after every game. What was your biggest takeaway from tonight?
Outside of Tyreek Hill, and you wrote about the defense. I thought the defense did a pretty darn good job, especially when you consider the last 2 weeks. Tampa Bay came into this game one of the top offenses as far as total yards per game, and the Chiefs defense did a good job initially. Obviously, they tacked on some points in the 4th quarter during that furious comeback attempt, but before that, they more than held their own. They got some pressure on Brady, which was obviously missing last week. I believe it was a sack and 7 quarterback hits. And as Andy Reid mentioned after the game, to your question, you don't necessarily have to bring him down. You just got to move him out of the pocket. And that's what they did. They were able to consistently put pressure on him, led to 2 interceptions, one that bounced off of Daniel Sorensen's helmet right into Tyrann Mathieu's hands. So I thought the defense did a pretty good job. The other thing that really stood out to me was the offensive line. Ooh, they had some issues today. That one drive, they had 3 offensive holdings. It was Eric Fisher, Nick Allegretti, and Andrew Wiley, and they had their issues tonight. But other than that, it was a pretty darn good game for the Chiefs overall. And I agree with you with your statement earlier. It doesn't matter where they go. Tonight's game was pretty impressive.
I want to get back to the defense in a minute because I think there's more to say about that. I want to say this about the holding calls. It was abysmal, but what I did notice, it turned it into like a 3rd and 20 or a 2nd and 30 or 3rd and 20, but the clock continued to roll after that, right? It's the old Bill Belichick move. You take a penalty to burn clock, and that Chiefs possession was able to go for 6 minutes without scoring. But Vahe, I wanted to talk to you because I know that you've got a column posted right now about the 2 quarterbacks in this game, and just sort of as much as you could try to capture the moment of Patrick Mahomes versus Tom Brady.
Well, it's interesting, right? Because Sam McDowell wrote a little bit about this earlier in the week, and tomorrow's paper won't be the first time the term potential passing the torch will be used in our fine outlet. But it had a little bit of that feeling in a different way, right? It might be the last time they'll play each other. Patrick now 2-2 against Brady. If we all remember this right, I think Brady's the only guy to have beaten Patrick twice. And now in this game, I just thought you saw something with Patrick that was just affirmation of where he's going in his career, right? I was joking with Sam Mellinger a little bit, like, is it too soon to say he's the best player I've ever seen? And not on a deadline column, it's not. So the feeling was strong in the moment. But he's headed that way, right? And obviously everything you say about him is a little contingent on, where he ends up with these numbers, how many Super Bowls he wins, all these things. But my goodness, I just thought there was so much clarifying and defining about his game today. And that was before that last drive, really, right? And the way he went about that drive, they won't be the highlight plays of his from this game, but they were as crucial as anything else. A little bit like the flip side of that loss to Oakland. Remember when the Chiefs got it to 40-32, they never got the ball back with a chance to tie it, and that was basically what happened here, right? They never gave the ball back.
Vahe, I really didn't like that passing the torch line in my story. I was trying to find a way to write around it, but now that I know that you've used it, I feel much better about it. Appreciate it.
You feel much better about that you almost avoided it.
I mean, if you thought it was good enough to copy it, then.
Line way back last year in December when the Chiefs beat them in New England.
Oh yeah, this goes way back. Well, I'm sure we'll pass the torch to another writer for it too.
Ton of comments here. Let's get into a few of the questions and comments. Gary Higgins says 3 losers from today's game: Steve Spagnuolo again, the front 7 again, no-show Chris Jones, and Frank Clark.
Ever optimist.
Right.
Yeah, I don't. Wow. Where does he get that from?
What'd you think, Herbie? I mean, you've already commented on the defense. Here's where I am. Again, in 2 games against the Raiders punted a total of 4 times. The Bucs punted 4 times in the first quarter tonight. The Chiefs had one multi-takeaway game before tonight, and tonight was the second one. So they did some things tonight that we haven't seen them do against the Raiders, the Panthers, the team that had given him trouble in recent weeks. And yet, they couldn't come up with the stop in the fourth quarter. Tom Brady took them down the field twice, couple of 70-plus yard drives, and got him in the end zone. And I don't know how about you guys feel about it, but I was thinking if the Bucs and Tom Brady got the ball back again down 3, chances of them scoring might have been as good as the Chiefs last week when they went down and scored against the Raiders in the last minute and a half. So I think the Chiefs had to hold on to the ball for the final 4 minutes to get this thing won. But I do think that the defense played better tonight. They brought more pressure than we've seen. from everybody, right? We saw corners blitz, with safeties blitz, linebackers blitz. There was pressure on Brady all night.
Yeah, I mean, 7 quarterback hits, 2 of them registered by Chris Jones. That says a lot. That means when you get credit for hitting the quarterback, that means you are applying pressure. And they were in Brady's face quite often, and especially in that first half. Now, granted, I'll agree with you in the second half there. There's a reason why I stopped writing midway through the fourth quarter when it looked like this game was going to be one of those, oh, here we go again type deals. But they held on. That's the key thing. But they were able to affect the passer, and that's the key thing. And with Brady, as we all know, if you give him time in the pocket, he'll pick you apart. But, they did their damage early enough, and they built that lead enough where they were able to hold on.
Go ahead.
Go.
I was just going to say at one point on this Chris Jones thing, because I've heard it a lot of criticism of Chris Jones. When you watch the tape, he is getting double teamed on almost every single play. And that's hard, especially for a guy on the inside to beat. And I wrote about this in today's paper already, but the difference in the pressure that the Chiefs are generating this year versus 2019 is the lack of contribution from the other guys. Frank Clark and Chris Jones have 9.5 sacks combined this year. They're pretty close to in line with what they produced last season. The difference is those other guys average 1.8 sacks per game. This year, they're less than half that. They're at 0.8 sacks per game. They're still their third leading sack guy is Taco Charlton. He's got 2 sacks all year. He's out. Their fourth leader has 1 sack all year. So to me, when Chris Jones and Frank Clark are demanding that much attention, and I think Frank Clark could play better, the rest of the guys, though, are the ones that have to make up this ground right now.
Yeah, and you're right, because Okafor's been hurt a lot. And remember last year, he was having a pretty good season before he landed on injured reserve. Emmanuel Ogbah now tearing it up right now in Miami. He was having a pretty good year before he landed on injured reserve. And they just haven't found that guy on the other defensive end spot to generate that pressure. You're absolutely correct. Tano Passanio, you would think that he would be that guy, but they're moving him all over the place. So he's not like his sole job isn't always to rush the passer. Let's not forget last week he was dropping back in coverage. So, they're utilizing Passanio in a lot of different ways.
We were talking a lot about Turk Wharton earlier this year. Haven't not much lately, though, is it?
Well, he got pressure on the sack that they had. And I think they probably gave Okafor and Mike Dana a half sack each on that. I didn't check the stats, but Wharton was in the backfield. And I didn't see him play quite as much today, I didn't think.
Okay, yeah, we'll get the snap counts first thing in the morning. So this game, 17-0. What did you guys think? Tony Romo said something that kind of struck me that teams that don't see the Chiefs as often as NFC teams do, or don't know about their speed, can't figure out their speed, and I don't know if I agree with that. The Chiefs play 4 NFC teams every year. They were 3-1 against them last year, 2-2 against them each of the previous 2 years. I just think it was a poor decision on the Bucs' part to single cover Tyreek Hill without a safety over the top. That certainly set the tone of the first half of the game. And how much with this game, how uninteresting would this game have been if the Chiefs in the red zone in the second quarter, about to go up 24-0 or at least 20-0, Mahomes gets strip sacked and loses the fumble. I don't believe that had happened to him this year, and I can probably count on one hand the number of times that it's happened to him in his career.
The only fumble he's lost. He'd only fumbled one other time. The only one he's lost, and I didn't get to independently check this out, but I'm sure it was right. On the broadcast, they said it was the first red zone turnover for the Chiefs in 17 games, which is pretty amazing. So you stack up those points, Blair. It really does figure into a really weird game. I mean, they scored touchdowns from 44 and 75 yards in the first half, and then they can't execute really in the red zone 3 times. And it's a different game if that happens. Hey, one other thing, just while I've got the hot mic, as Sam Mellinger knows, I just want to say this about the defense. It's maybe just reiterating what you guys have said, but it's kind of a Rorschach test how you look at their game today. You could sort of see what you wanted to in this game. Certainly they did more things to help them win and be an asset than they did the last 2 weeks. all those punts in the first half. And I think it was a net win on the first drive of the second half after the 48-yard pass to Gronkowski when the Bucs are on the move and they hold them to a field goal there. That proved crucial. That's all. Mike back.
Yeah, I thought that I know it's easy to blame the defense, and sometimes I feel like still we're working on just sort of muscle memory from like the last few Bob Sutton years when it was just always the defense's fault. This is going to be the highest scoring season in NFL history. The standards for the defense need to be lower. The standards for the offense need to be higher, especially for this team. And Blair, you just made the point that I was just like screaming out of my eyeballs as you were talking about the red zone stuff. In the second quarter, this game could have been done and dusted if the offense did what is reasonably expected for the offense to do. Tampa Bay's got a really good team, man. To hold them, I know it was like 7.5 yards per play, so I'm not. And those Frank Clark, hand to the helmet on Tom Brady. I mean, that can't happen. But to hold that team to 24 points and to get those takeaways, like you mentioned, the offense can do more than 10 points over the last three quarters. I don't think that's on the defense at all.
I've got a line in my story about the defense tomorrow where I say it almost was scared to write it that the offense let the defense down in the third quarter tonight because they get a couple of interceptions and Mahomes and the offense go 3 and out after each of them. That was another opportunity to seize the game and the offense couldn't do it on a night when the offense was phenomenal in different ways. They in that moment to take control of the game, unable to do that. And Andy Reid said something about it after the game as well.
But Blair, did you sneak in an F-bomb in that sentence though?
Did I? It's been known to happen in these After Dark productions.
I would never.
No, not by Sam. So Andrew Leifer noticed we do have to give credit where it's due. Multiple times Brady's lob passes, including that 48-yarder to Gronkowski, were sped up and not planned and resulted in solid plays on the back end. I mean, that Brady, I think, was halfway down when he released the ball to Gronkowski on that long pass over the middle. That was just a terrific play by great quarterback and a great tight end. So the Chiefs did get to him. They did affect him, but he still ends up throwing for 345 and 3 touchdowns. And that's I don't know. That's Tom Brady. And didn't the Bucs have every bit the motivation this week that the Chiefs did after playing poor defensively against the Raiders last Sunday night? The Bucs lose on Monday night at home to the LA Rams, and you hear Brady and Bruce Arians, the stories about them squabbling this week about Brady misfiring on deep balls. He didn't do much of that tonight. He connected on several handful of passes that traveled over 20 yards. He was 0 for his last 22 on those or something like that. So.
Yeah, that's a point that either Andy or Tyrann Mathieu made, as actually both of them, I think, in the postgame made of bringing the emotion again after the Raiders game, because that was an emotional game for the Chiefs, same as the Bucs just played an emotional Monday game. So that also fits 100% this thing that we've been talking about for a long time now of the Chiefs. They'll rise to the moment. Sometimes they'll fall to it. If the opponent is uninteresting, but they will rise to the moment. This was basically a standalone national. It wasn't Sunday Night Football, obviously, or Monday Night Football, but in a lot of ways it was a standalone national, kind of game of the week situation. And I think the Chiefs rose to it. And
Patrick Mahomes did in a big way too. The 75-yarder to Tyreek Hill was by far the longest completion of the year, and I'm sure Sam McDowell covered in his story, but the adjustment that Tyreek Hill made on that play where he had turned around and did a 360 to get into the end zone. That was phenomenal. And to be honest with you, I thought Mahomes' best touchdown pass was the third one, the 20-yarder. That was just not many NFL players make that throw.
Yeah, that first touchdown though traveled like 61.6 yards in the air, and that's the furthest that he's ever completed a pass with.
That was not. I mean, the trajectory on that, like the launch angle. If we were talking about baseball, right? Like it was more of a line drive than it was a pop fly. I mean, he threw the crap out of that ball. That was something. There was some velocity on that.
Paul Brashears says, don't do much left-right running and stretching the D, mostly right up the middle. When we had success running, it was Mahomes and Hill left-right. Kept running Bell and Clyde up the middle for 3 and 5. Hey, look, Tampa Bay's got the best, if not the best, then one of the best rushing defenses in the league. And I thought that that option keeper by Mahomes that picked up 17 yards was the was the running play of the day. That was terrific. And of course, smart enough to run out of bounds and avoid contact. But listen, I thought the Chiefs, especially the early returns on the running game, were so bad. I just thought, but Mahomes he's going to have big numbers because they're not going to be able to run the ball. But I thought they did a decent job. They outgained Tampa Bay rushing, and Bell and Edwards-Helaire didn't have monster games, but they each had a double-digit run, and that part didn't hurt them. It didn't hurt them tonight, and when you've got Patrick Mahomes, you've got the ultimate advantage.
The Bucs entered the game ranked first against the run in the league. They only allowed 73 yards per game, and then the Chiefs put up 87. So you're absolutely correct. When you're running against the Bucs defense, it's like pick your poison, and they picked the right one. 49 passing attempts compared to 20 rushing attempts, and the passing game was on.
Yeah. Larry Looper
Did you guys
asked,
think?
Go ahead, Sam.
Just sorry, but real quick, this is a little bit off topic. I apologize, but remember when McCole Hardman was wide open down the seam on the left side? Couldn't that throw have been more accurate?
Yeah, for sure.
I thought it was more
on the broadcast. They were blaming. It was like they were blaming Hardman, but the throw made Hardman kind of turn around.
I thought it was more of a bad throw than a dropped pass. I mean, I think it would have been. You like to see the guy catch that ball, but it pulled him the other way, and he was wide open if he led him properly.
Yeah. But anyway,
Mahomes
still had a good game.
Yeah, he did okay. But no, that'd have been a 90-yard touchdown pass because nobody was catching McCole Hardman, and I wonder if Hardman was where he was supposed to be on that. Now, Mahomes is good enough to make any kind of sight adjustment and see where McCole Hardman is, but that could have been a phenomenal moment, and again maybe another opportunity to bury the Bucs. I can't exactly remember what the score was at that moment and what happened to the Chiefs' possession there, but that was another kind of missed a missed opportunity, and that was Mahomes' worst throw of the game. I got to think.
That's where we are with this guy. Like, we're wondering if McCole Hardman just couldn't have been in the right place if that's where the pass was.
Well, another thing like that, when Patrick threw the interception and the flag went out there, I was certain. Well, he knew it was a free play because otherwise he wouldn't have thrown it so poorly. And then it turned out actually it was roughing the passer that time, so it wasn't. He knew it was a free play, but I just gave him the benefit of the doubt.
He just knows. He just knows. We figured out he's up to 30 touchdowns and 2 interceptions for the year. He's got a chance. He's got a chance to have a nice season. I don't know what his yards are up to, but so I guess we can talk about this on Thursday when we come back. But let's just say he didn't do anything to hurt his MVP chances here tonight. So anyway, Larry Looper was asking about playoff picture and keeping up with the Steelers and everything. The Chiefs, I think the Chiefs would be favored against any team in the NFL on a neutral field, right? And I think they'd maybe be favored against any team on their home field now. They were 3.5-point favorite today at Tampa. Maybe they wouldn't be favored at Pittsburgh, but I don't know where else they would be an underdog, and they would play Pittsburgh in Pittsburgh if things were, if they ended today. But the Chiefs have been as good on the road, if not better, than they have been at Arrowhead Stadium this year. And when you've got this offense and these weapons, I don't see any place where they're not going to win. I don't see it.
First of all, pour one out for the people that did have that Chiefs at 3.5, because that was a rough way to lose that one. But Pennsylvania is not allowing these football teams to have fans right now. I mean, the Chiefs are good on the road already. They were as good last year on the road as they were at home. We saw them lose back-to-back games at home. I don't see the home road thing mattering all that much, especially for this team.
Totally, and in some ways, Mahomes can take advantage of it in ways that other quarterbacks. The hard count. Sam, you should write about that at some point. Mahomes' use of the hard count, but he got the Bucs. Well, it was twice on that opening drive, and then I can't remember now if how many times, if at all the rest of the time. So. One more. Mahomes catching a break finally.
Matt O'Connor checks in from the West Coast. Tyreek has become the dream of what every team's speed guy has hoped to be: route, ball tracking, high pointing hands, and toughness. That's absolutely right. I mean, he has really developed. He's got to be an all pro wide receiver this year. I think we've determined he after tonight he leads the NFL in receiving yards, and he's got to be right there at the top in touchdowns too.
Is Herbie still here?
Herbie's here.
There he is.
Why are you asking?
I just hadn't heard from him in a while.
Who wants to know?
Who wants to know?
Your compadre. All right, let's wrap it up. A lot of great comments and questions tonight. Thanks, you guys. And I know we're still working on some stories. Be sure to read the coverage on kansascity.com in the print editions of the Kansas City Star. And I just want to say, for Herbie Teope, who is still with us, and Sam Mellinger, and Vahe Gregorian, and Sam McDowell, and our producer, Beth Welsh, who has bread baking in the oven in her house right now. And I don't think she's planning on sharing. But anyway, Beth, thanks a lot, and thank you guys. And we'll talk to you again on Thursday as the Chiefs prepare to meet the Denver Broncos on Sunday Night Football. Take care, guys.